Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Jo Abbott, a Christian romance author. Today I'm going to answer a question that I get asked a lot, which is how do you come up with stories? So I have been a writer. I've been publishing for several years now, but I've been a writer my whole life. So I've always been coming up with story ideas, characters, things I wanted to write, all that kind of stuff. So I come up with stories a number of different ways. Sometimes it will be, and my very first story that I wrote literally came from one sentence that I heard somebody say one time, and it just stuck with me. And I just kept thinking for years, because my first book took me years and years to write, and took me years and years to start writing. But I just kept thinking about how a character saying that one sentence could turn into a whole story, and what would make that person say that, what was their background, and how would that look as their life played out with their other characters and things like that. So that literally came from just one line that I heard somebody say. My second book, I don't remember how I came up with that story, but my third book I remember actually came from a song, and the chorus of the song, I just came up with a whole story from that. And so it's not the story of the song, but it just made me think of, what if characters were saying what the characters in the song were saying to each other? Like, what could that look like? What was their history, and what would their future look like? Really, their future from the song. So that was from a song. Now I really like to think of themes or things I want to see happen to the characters. My current series that I'm writing, which is the Whispering Oaks Ranch, I really wanted to write stories that had to do with redemption. And so I kind of started thinking about what are things that someone might need to be redeemed from, or what could they maybe think that they needed to be redeemed from, even if they were, already forgiven by other people. What's something that they could be redeemed from? I also knew that I wanted to write characters that were adopted. My family my family that I grew up in is an adoptive family, and I have adopted siblings, and we did foster care and those kinds of things. So, and I have a number of friends who have adopted and done foster care and those things. So all of those themes are really near and dear to my heart. And so I knew I wanted to write some stories that had that in it. So, and I wanted those to be redemptive stories too. So, so that was more of like a theme that I wanted to carry throughout the series. And so that's kind of how those stories came to be. So, so that's kind of how I come up with stories. There are different ways. It might just be, sometimes I will see a news article or just a story where somebody says like, this is how they met, or this is something that happened. And then you just kind of start thinking like, well, what if that did happen to a character? Like, what would happen next? Or what if, how these people met, like, what if two characters met that way, but then they never saw each other for a long time, or something like that. So that's just a question I ask myself a lot, is like, well, what if? And there are actually lots of what ifs that will never turn into a story, but it's fun to think about them, and that's how I come up with stories sometimes. So sometimes it's just a line, sometimes it's and a lot of times too, I will think of one scene that I want to write. I can think of a couple of books where I knew I wanted to write this scene, and so then I would kind of construct a whole story based around that scene, just so I could write that scene. So those are a couple different ways that I come up with characters, and just whatever pops into my head, sometimes I will think about how that can work. So I hope that answers that question, and I hope you have a great day.